of the Cantab Lounge, your old home poetry venue. She says your name is still spoken there with a sense of reverence. You may have started receiving postcards from other people now. Let this be, to quote you, new evidence against all odds of how much you are loved. Dear Jack, thanks for your advice about how I should stay single for 5 years. However, that's not going to happen. I've met a woman named Rachel, and I love her. Dear Jack, Rachel said she wrote you from my stash of postcards because she could tell how much you mean to me. What did she say? Never mind, that's none of my business. P.S. We're getting married. Dear Jack, without being too morbid, let me just say that I will miss you when you're gone. I love you, and 80 postcards could not begin to explain how much. How many have you received? Not from me, I mean. Dear Jack, today I heard the news that you are gone, but I'm writing you this postcard anyway, because I've been able to say things here that I cannot elsewhere. Rest in peace. P.S. I thought I made these postcards to help other people deal with their grief, but Rachel says it was to deal with my own. Dear Jack, someday in the future, maybe 2020, we may all gather on something called Zoom, and we may share stories about how much we loved you. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Taylor, that was fantastic.
Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I've always enjoyed listening to you read and watching you read. It's nice to hear sort of a subdued Taylor, you know. We're not on stage, you know, and that's kind of what I like about doing things like this on Zoom, is that my microphone's right here. I don't need to yell. I don't need to shout. You know, it's really lovely. I also wanted to acknowledge the McCarthy's in the room. Hello, McCarthy's. Hello. Great to see you. I'm glad you're here. It's an honor.
God, there's that line in Careful What You Ask For. We came close once between Megan and Kathleen. That's the Kathleen? That's the actual Kathleen from the line of poetry?
That's the actual Kathleen.
Honored.
Beyond the poetry connection, there's a DNA connection, Taylor. Like, that's probably slightly more cooler, you know? More cooler English. All right.
Is the little girl who he punched in the face, is she on here now? She'd be about 81 years old, right?
Oh, if only.
We only have a few more readers left. We will be done within the 2 hours. So Wes, I know that you had a selection. That you had another selection that you wanted to read. So if you would like to end the night with that piece, I would be honored. So up next is going to be Hope Jordan, followed by myself, then Tony Brown, then Wes Mongo Jolly, in that order. So that'll close out the night. So so I am on deck, but then coming up right now, Hope Jordan grew up in Chittenango, New York, and holds a dual BA from Syracuse and an MFA from UMass Boston. She lives in New Hampshire, where she was the state's first official poetry slam master. Her chapbook is The Day She Decided to Feed Crows. Folks, please welcome Hope Jordan.
Thanks, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, good. I just want to say how amazing it is to be in this room with you. I had the opportunity to teach undergraduates at UMass Boston, and I taught not only Jack's poetry, but Taylor's poetry. And it's like so amazing to like be, you know, here talking to you guys. And Mike, you really helped build the New Hampshire slam scene back in the day when we didn't have any resources, and you came and featured. You really made a big difference. So just thanks to all you guys. So humbling to be here. I'm going to read the piece I have in the book. It's like almost 5 minutes long, so I hope it's not too long for you guys. Jessica's saying it's okay. Maybe I'll delete some, but I'm just struck by reading the book. I'm struck by how common my experience is among everyone who knew Jack. We met in the pages of the Christian Science Monitor. It was 1994. I was a 20-something cocktail waitress who occasionally drove the hour and a half from my home in New Hampshire to check out the Poetry Slam at the Cantab in Boston. Slam was new then. The now legendary Patricia Smith co-hosted the open mic and ran the slam with the poet Michael Brown. That night, I met Jack. I'd driven down with the goal of reading in the open mic, but by the time I arrived, the open mic was over. Jack had already left. My name happened somehow to be on the list of people competing in the slam. With true beginner's luck, I won the night. The Christian Science Monitor happened to be there. They interviewed me, and they had earlier interviewed Jack and taken his picture. Back then, Jack was just starting to be a regular at the Cantab, working by day, blossoming into a stand-up poet by night. Even then, in the early days of slam poetry, Jack was an anomaly. In a discipline that rewards bombast and showmanship, Jack's quiet conversational style stood out. He dressed in running shoes and jeans and button-down shirts. He'd get up on stage and share poems about his life, his wife's miscarriage, lifelong struggle with alcoholism, old cars, a second marriage. But he mesmerized crowds. He would build quietly, slowly, self-deprecating to a fault, and make you laugh before bringing his poem to the kinds of endings that brought tears and applause. His language was simple, but he paid precise attention to it. Jack would hone his timing and his words at open mics in Boston 3 or 4 nights a week. He became a master of the art of the spoken word. After we appeared together in the pages of the Christian Science Monitor, I was scheduled to compete against Jack for a spot in the semifinals. Michael Brown emailed me about it, and I responded breezily, referring to Jack as Jack, what's his name? Jack McCarthy, Michael answered, even through the email, I could sense his irritation with me. Respect your elders, respect poets who are better than you. Despite my cockiness, Jack crushed me in our first and only competition. But he was so gracious, so complimentary, I almost didn't mind. His graciousness was a hallmark. Despite his rock star status, he showed up for features on time or early, stayed until the last trembling newbie had finished at the open mic, and often declined to accept whatever modest honoraria were on offer. I'm just going to go off page for a minute and say this is possibly, this is a thing that I follow myself, and I never leave until the last person's finished at the mic, and I think my husband perhaps does not love this about me, but I'm like, Jack would have wanted it that way. You know, like I'm not leaving until it's over, like I'm not leaving until it's over. Eventually, I stopped going to slams. Jack went on to publish 5 books, compete at 3 national poetry slams, win a national poetry slam haiku, host a local television cable show, eventually drop his day job to become a full-time stand-up poet. We kept in touch, and then in 2006, I co-founded a slam poetry venue in New Hampshire, and Jack helped launch it by doing a feature. In fact, I think he did a few of them for us. Today, I'm around the age Jack was when we first met, and he still inspires me. I just finished my MFA at age 55 this May, and used to teach a poetry class to undergraduates. I was honored to be able to share Jack's poetry with them. And I still kind of live by the end of his poem, the words at the end of his poem, Substances. So he chronicles a series of addictions. Most of you know this, from drinking to smoking to jogging. And he ends with poetry, the quote, substance of your destiny, in which at last the speaker and the reader too understand at last that all the pain you ever gave the slip was the pain of not doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Hope. Thank you so much. That was really necessary, really wonderful. I do appreciate that. I think that it's funny how certain lessons in life I can actually, like, when I'm reminded of like, oh, I'm about to make the same mistake I've made before, but now I know better because somebody told me it was a mistake. I always go to the moment that I learned the mistake, that it is a mistake. And Jack proofread my first collection of poetry and years ago, and when I was living in Worcester, and he said, of all the things that I've fixed in your book, he goes, the only one you absolutely need to remember is lay, laid, and lay. And he said that is the most important thing. He goes, forego everything else. You can leave all the other mistakes in your book. He goes, that one I will not allow. So to this day, I have to sit there and go, whenever I'm writing any form of lay, past, present, future tense, whatever, I have to think, what would Jack do? WWJD. I know this is going to seem a little self-centered, but I'm about to read a poem that has my own name in it from Jack's. It's called My Back Pages. In the book, it's page 139, and I'm reading it tonight specifically because it's about the time I lived in Worcester. And Jack came to one of my events in Worcester. I used to do kitchen sessions in my house, in my kitchen in Worcester. I still do them. I can't do them now because of COVID, but we do them here in San Jose, California still, quarterly. But they used to be every month. So I'm sitting in Mike McGee's kitchen on a rainy night, having found my way in spite of bad MapQuest directions that sent me through Kelly Square at drive time. And trust me, Kelly Square, Worcester's where directions go to die. Rainy night, drive time, or no. I'm here because Mike has started a series called The Kitchen Sessions, because, no brainer, he holds them in the kitchen of his little apartment, which by virtue of not having a table, does have space for a dozen or so folding chairs, and being the third floor of an old New England house, alcove standing room in several directions, not counting the unisex bathroom, which instead of a door has just a folding screen that doesn't really close. It was like one of those old 70s accordion doors on a bathroom, which just mind-boggling. And the place is packed, not because I'm the featured reader, but because the kitchen is Mike McGee's kitchen. And anyway, it doesn't take all that many people to pack it. And they're all young. If there are 30 people there, maybe 2 of them have made it to half my age. Not naming any names, you know who you are. And most of the rest are under 30 and beautiful. Not in the sense that the capital B, capital P's have jetted in from north, south, east, west for poetry in Worcester, Massachusetts on a Friday night. No, what I'm doing with that word beautiful is putting myself squarely on the side of the woman who said the young have no idea how beautiful they are. The way Mike runs this thing, it starts with 7 or 8 readers from the audience, signed up mostly in advance, and all reading work that's never been heard anywhere. And while Mike is introducing the more or less open mic, he encourages them to keep it short because Jack, quote, Jack isn't getting any younger, unquote. And everyone laughs, including Jack, because it is funny. Humor is based on incongruity, unexpectedness. 50 years ago in college, Jack had a friend, funny guy, good writer, who held that all humor is based on incongruous juxtaposition. And there is something very incongruous about juxtaposing this lined and seamed and stooped old man and all these beautiful young people, something forever unexpected. No matter how many times you watch it unfold in the way they listen to him, the old do not expect the young to listen. He thinks about how this happened, about the man he was before. He learned that he could do this, that this listening existed, was out there waiting for him. That man was a good man, or at least tried very hard to be. Maybe it's the same. But he had already begun to feel the irreversible slow contraction that tends toward only one terminus. That man wanted for nothing, having given up on so much. Dylan. I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now. So thank you, Mike, for having me. It was an honor and a pleasure to stand in your kitchen and read to your beautiful young audience. But you were wrong about that one thing. Jack is getting younger, all the time. Younger. Jack draws energy from the beautiful young, not, I hope, parasitically, but symbiotically, each providing stuff the other needs. Maybe what Jack draws from the osmosis is an attitude adjustment in the direction of their not always correct assumption that there's plenty of time. Not everything has been decided. Not every possibility has been exhausted. What do they get from Jack? Something tells me that the day Jack thinks he can answer, that will be the day he finally fucks it up. Jack McCarthy, folks. Blood-ow, as Jack would have said, because that was his catchphrase. He said it all the time. You probably just didn't hear it. You weren't paying attention. It's fine. It's okay. Let's see here. On deck, we got Wes Mongo Jolly is on deck. If he wants to read. Wes, do you want to read your other piece? Your other selection?
Sure, but I thought Tony was still to read.
You're on deck. Tony's next.
Oh, I'm on deck. Ah, okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Tony's bio is very short, but I will say this. One of my absolute favorite poets, one of my favorite human beings of all time. Like that. I mean, Tony, you're welcome to put that in your bio if you want. I don't know. It won't get you any more gigs necessarily, but I'm flabbergasted by the amount of work that Tony has produced in his life. But having lived above him in that same New England triple-decker, there aren't a whole lot of things I miss about living in Worcester, namely the cold and the humidity in the summer. But I really miss sitting in that one chair, drinking coffee and chain smoking with Tony and Missy. Tony Brown is a poet from Worcester, Massachusetts. Jack once told him he regretted never being on a slam team with him. He does too. Folks, please give Tony Brown a big warm welcome.
Thank you, everybody. It's been great to hear and see all of you tonight and to be thinking about Jack. A couple things before we get started. Yeah, I am still in the same three-decker. I'm in my kitchen, which is 2 floors below where that last poem took place. I was there that night, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure I'm one of the not young people that Jack was referring to in that poem. And yeah, I think that's it. There's Jack and I were frequently the oldest people at a reading when we were together. Even though I'm only 60, I'm significantly younger than him. But we frequently chuckled about that at things. Also, I wanted to just say something because when people were listing, Jack's books and CDs, I was listening for CDs and I realized something, which is here's another one that was not on that list: Breaking Down Outside a Gas Station. This is a live CD. It was recorded at the Cantab and Worcester. Substances was recorded in Worcester and Urbana was where the rest of it. So Taylor, I don't know if you have a copy of it. Do you still have a copy of it somewhere? No? I don't know who's got a copy of it, but I do, and that counts. So there you go. So that's great. It's a wonderful little CD. I'm just going to read the poem that I chose to read from the book. And it was one I did not know, of course. So this is me and Jerry Lee. And I apologize. My voice is a little rough tonight, so I'm not going to try and sing too much because I like you all. Well, the band was on its final break when he came walking in with eyes that showed more than his age. He was drunk, worn, and thin, sat down behind the old piano and ran through a couple notes and said, "Somebody buy me a drink, boys, to help me clear my throat." I'm listening to Jerry Lee Lewis sing, "I'd do it all again." The same Jerry Lee, a couple of whose wives have died suspicious deaths, and I'm thinking, no, I would not do it all again. My first wife, granted she's alive, but she's a deacon in the church of Jack Wrecked My Life. If I had it to do over, I'd be a better husband to her. Maybe do her a favor by just never marrying her. What would you give to hear a song? What price do memories bring? It ain't every day you get to hear a living legend sing. I may forget a line or two, a few words now and then. It takes a drink to make me think and live it all again. But if I'd never married Joan, 3 remarkable young women would never have entered my life from the limbo of the unborn. So marrying her is not a thread I want to pull on. I just should have been a better husband to her. This gray you see don't bother me, and neither do these lines. I may have seen some better days, boys, but God knows I ain't reached my prime. I was in my prime the summer midnight. I walked across the street with a masonry hammer in my hand to confront the hoodlums who've been making life miserable for the whole neighborhood. They did move out soon after, but we all carry scars from that one night. Joan never trusted my judgment again. My prime was over when I walked back. I've got some scars from a woman's war, playing these one-night stands. Lord only knows if I had the time, I'd do it all again. The whole song, you never hear the word mistake. Maybe it was never gonna work, no matter how we played our hands. Or maybe if I'm a better husband, we're still together and I never meet Carol, never become a poet. Maybe being the loose cannon with the gift of being there without actually being there was another mistake that worked out right. 'Cause I could still make them dance like I did in San Antone. And I can still make them cry. And I can touch them with a song. Did you ever write a poem and try it out in front of an audience and be amazed how well it worked? And you know it isn't perfect, and you feel duty bound to edit it. But you're afraid to touch a single word because you don't understand why it works so well. That's the way I feel about my life. And I can still, yes, turn them on the way I did back then. Lord only knows if I had the time, I'd do it all again. So if you're sitting there with a pen and a contract in your pocket, waiting to get me alone so I can sign in blood for a do-over, well, yeah, there's a lot of things I could have done better. And maybe I wouldn't do it all again. But I can live with the way it all worked out. I can more than live with it. It feels like a miracle to me. So thanks, but no thanks. 'Cause I could still make 'em dance like I did in San Antone. And I can still make 'em cry, and I can touch 'em with a song. And I can still, yes, turn 'em on the way I did back then. Lord only knows if I had the time, I do it all. Again, thanks, but no thanks. See you, Jack.
I am so grateful that someone who can sing read that piece. That was
What were you
amazing,
listening
Tony.
to, Mike? Because I didn't hear that.
No, come on. I've heard you play music so often. You know what you're doing. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to introduce. So John Lawler is in the crowd with us tonight, and so after Mongo, John would like to share a memory as well. I know nothing about you, John. So if you could maybe in the chat post a little bio about yourself so that we know a little bit more about you. But right now, I wanted to point this out. Look what I found. Wes Mongo Jolly. What's really cool about this is that I just introduced Tony. He drove me and Missy down to New York for this event, the Indie Feed Urbana Showcase 2009, October 27th.
Volume 1.
Yeah, it was, and now I'm about to introduce you, and you made this event happen. That was a great night. That was a really fun night.
Amazing night, it really was.
Yeah. And that was the night I got a really good picture of you, and I got some really good pictures of Tony and Missy as well. Yeah, folks, another round of applause. And please welcome once again, Wes Mongo Jolly.
Oh, thank you. Now, Mike, let me ask really quick. Are we at a hard stop at 9 o'clock?
I mean, it's honestly, if you got to go, please
go
ahead and leave. If anybody needs to leave, go for it. But I imagine that we'll only be here maybe 10 past 9 your time at most.
I was afraid it was going to shut down at 9 o'clock.
No, we're no. It shouldn't. No.
Okay, great. Well, then I'll go ahead and read the essay that I have in the book that I had glad I have a chance to share a little bit of this. I really wanted to write in the book when Jessica asked me to talk a little bit about Jack and to write an essay for this volume. I really wanted to talk a little bit about my experience of seeing Jack kind of from the outside, because the thing about being a podcaster the way I was is that I was never really kind of deeply enmeshed in any particular community. I got like flavors and tastes of everything, and so I got to kind of be an observer at all these events. And so one thing I really enjoyed was when I would get a chance to see Jack performing at a venue, was to observe the way he affected the audience and the kinds of interactions that he had with the audience afterwards, and then talk to people about it. And that was one of my great joys. So this piece is called Jack McCarthy, Opening Doors from the Beyond. I feel like a child every time I listen to Jack McCarthy. In slam, so much of what we write and hear is strident, aggressive, and defiant. And although all of that is vitally important, Jack's poetry provides a much-needed place of peace. His work never fails to remind us that life is good, that we have people who love us, and that we should be living and celebrating every miraculous moment of this improbable journey to its fullest. There is such wisdom, insight, and compassion in his words that even in the most raucous slam, the audience around him always went as silent and attentive as children sitting around the feet of a beloved grandfather. Jack's life in the Poetry Slam was remarkable for his overwhelming generosity to everyone he encountered. He arrived on the scene in the 1990s, and it took no time at all for him to be recognized as the towering poetic talent that he was. Perhaps at first it was his age, which was sometimes 2 or even 3 times the age of the other slammers. Perhaps that's what garnered him that respect. But in no time, the respect was for his amazing poetry and especially for his flawless performance. Over the next 20 years, he produced a body of work and a legacy that stands as a testament to not only his own genius, but to the vitality and importance of the community that he loved. But as powerful as Jack's poetry was, I believe that it was in the quiet and intimate conversations with younger poets where Jack made his most long-lasting contributions. In 2012, we were all learning of Jack's illness and began to accept that his time with us would be short. At that time, I used my podcast, which was the Indie Feed Performance Poetry channel, to invite listeners to call in and leave a voice message for Jack before he passed away. Kristen O'Keefe-Aptowitz and I edited those clips into a half-hour-long tribute to Jack that still brings tears to my eyes whenever I listen to it. Poet after poet called in to share their anecdotes, and it was clear that there was a pattern. Everywhere Jack went, touring through town after town across America, he had ongoing, quiet conversations with the young poets who came to see him perform. He imparted his wisdom, and most of all, he imparted his compassion. He reminded poet after poet that what they were doing was important, was meaningful. The number of poets that Jack touched in this way will probably never be known, but in those messages we received for the podcast, the number of times the word inspiration was uttered was truly astounding. Now, here we are, years later, and it's comforting to see how his legacy lives on. So many of those poets that Jack inspired are now going on to provide that same level of gentle inspiration and guidance to each new generation that steps on the poetry stage. But one of the most enduring legacies of Jack McCarthy is one that very few people know about. In fact, Jack himself had no idea about this particular piece of his legacy, and I'm honored to be able to share this story with readers. Jack McCarthy was an alumnus of Dartmouth College, a small but very tight-knit Ivy League college in Hanover, New Hampshire. And coincidentally, I worked at Dartmouth College for 22 years. And during that entire time, I didn't know Jack well enough to realize that he had graduated from there many decades earlier. We only discovered this point in common very near the end of his life. Shortly after Jack died, I heard from Carol that the Dartmouth College Library had been working with her to acquire Jack's papers. It took some years, but the Jack McCarthy collection is now housed and protected at Rauner Library on the Dartmouth campus. Now, a quick detour. A decade ago, I founded an organization called the Performance Poetry Preservation Project, which is dedicated to collecting and preserving the recorded history of the Poetry Slam movement. Our organization has collected tens of thousands of recordings, chapbooks, memorabilia, and other items of slam history. And obviously, Jack McCarthy was a critical voice in the recordings that we were collecting. While Carol was working with Dartmouth to preserve Jack's papers, P4 was searching for an academic library that would become the permanent repository for our vast collection. And despite working at Dartmouth, I never considered Dartmouth a candidate for our collection because they had no specialization either in poetry, performance, or slam in particular. But with Dartmouth's acquisition of Jack's papers, suddenly Dartmouth found itself collecting more and more in the area of slam poetry. I was extremely pleased to discover that more than just collecting Jack's work, they now wanted to broaden their collecting priorities to include slam as a genre. So I approached the college, and based on the door that Jack had opened, we eventually signed a deed of gift for our collection to Dartmouth Special Collections Library. All of our recordings, chapbooks, and the other items are now housed there where they can be preserved and protected. Now, looking back on this now, the synchronicity of it all still kind of stuns me. Jack McCarthy was always the most generous of poets, and he opened countless doors within the slam community. Carol tells me how pleased she thinks Jack would be to know that his papers are now at Dartmouth. But way beyond that, Jack's spirit and generosity has opened another critical door. His papers and his connection to Dartmouth College has made it possible for his old alma mater to become what we believe will become the largest and most meaningful collection of slam and performance poetry on the planet. And I think that would please Jack really very much. Tom Lux once said of Jack McCarthy, quote, "The only ambition he seems to have is to tell the truth as best he can in his poems," unquote. Jack responded to that assessment by saying that although that is a very worthy ambition, it was not his only one. He also hoped to be remembered as an integral member of the movement to restore poetry to its rightful place in everyday American life. Quote, "So that when Americans think of poetry, they don't think of school and homework, but of laughter and tears, a shortcut to the heart," unquote. Without knowing it, and even after his passing, Jack has provided his community with a venue where the history of slam poetry can be collected, preserved, and shared. Jack, if you're listening, nicely done. That's it. Thank you. I wanted to say before I closed out, you guys held up the CD for Breaking Down Outside a Gas Station, and that is definitely one of the recordings that exist in this poetry collection. It has been preserved, and there's actually, I think, 2 or 3 different copies in that collection from different people have donated. So it'll be around for a very long time. And that's the album that introduced me to Jack. I just featured so much of his work on Indie Feed from that album, so it was great to see it still being out there. All right, back to you, Mike.
Mongo, can everybody please just give Mongo a big round of applause? Because I think that as much credit as you give to others, I mean, you honor everyone that you ever talk about. As somehow you could be saying, hey, Joe, this is Steve. Steve, this is Joe. Joe is known for blah, blah, blah. You're such a natural promoter of people and poets. And I love you for it, Mongo. And I just, God damn it, I love you for it. You are.
Every time he would do his outros for Indie Feed, I would be listening. If it was a poet I knew, I would think to myself, oh, it would be really good if he mentioned that URL. And right on cue, he would say, and there's a URL you could go, oh, it would be ideal if he mentioned that person was going to be the feature at the Slam. And they're featuring at the Slam every time.
Every time. I mean, just the best. So, I think I said this in one of the last episodes of the Indie Feed Performance Poetry podcast, that you have done more for poetry, spoken word, and poetry slam than just about any single human being has done. Because while we may have participated in it and created some of it, you're going to make sure the future gets to see that, hear it, and experience it. So don't sell yourself short, Mongo. You're cash money, bro.
Wow.
Cash money, which is a Jack McCarthy.
Let's all do this again in 30 years when Mongo dies.
Yeah.
30 years? I'm planning on 50. Come on, give me a break.
Oh, he's in Canada, so he has great healthcare, so he can't die.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, Canadians live till they're 146, 147. So now, thanks again, Mongo. Can we all just clap for Mongo out loud so we can hear it?
Woo! Clap for the poet.
Mongo.
Stefan. Clap for the poet. Okay, so now I would like to introduce John Lawler, who would like to share his remembrance from 2013. John, where are you zooming in from, John?
From Lowell, Massachusetts.
Oh, his birthplace, Jack's birthplace. If I'm not mistaken, no? Was he not born in Lowell?
Jack, do you know Kathleen?
You're muted, Kathleen.
Muted. I think he lived in Lowell at one point. I know that, and I know Jack Kerouac obviously is from there, but
He did live in Lowell. He was born in South Boston.
Oh, gotcha.
Southie, as it's known.
Yeah. My mistake.
thank you, everybody. This will be fairly brief. I used to go to a Sunday afternoon folk music program at Club Passim in Cambridge. One Sunday, the program featured 4 local poets, and one of them was Jack McCarthy. When the program began, I was pretty sure I knew what poetry was, and I was also pretty sure I didn't like most of it. But what Jack did that afternoon was a revelation. He spoke to each of us in that room in a direct, personal style about things that mattered, in ways that changed how we saw the world. Hearing a voice you're not expecting to hear, whether on the road to Damascus or at a small music club in Cambridge, can be a life-changing experience. I learned a lot from Jack over the years, and he inspired me to write. Jack introduced me to the Cantab Lounge, where his own writing and performing began to take off a couple of decades ago. Jack even tried to teach me a little about competing in poetry slams, which was a little like trying to teach my cat how to win the Preakness. Kathy and I were married in 1999, and at our wedding, Jack read a poem he wrote for and about Carol called Neponset Circle, which speaks to commitment, love, and finding your way. We haven't forgotten it. Many words come to mind in describing Jack and his poetry, words like wisdom, humor, grit, wonder. There's also a humility in much of Jack's work, although he was a confident and passionate performer and a fierce competitor in poetry slams. Jack could be shy and unassuming, but he projected a powerful personality, and he reached and moved an astounding number of people. All that said, Jack had an understated, straightforward presence and a strong appreciation of his own deficiencies. These connected him to his audience and served to strengthen the moments of irony, insight, or pure joy that followed. There's a moment in one of Jack's poems where he talks about trying to make a point to a group of children, his daughters and their cousins. This one time, Jack said, they all listened to me, fascinated, like pigeons in a sisi. Part of the reason the moment works is that self-deprecatory phrase, this one time. And part of the reason is that we know Jack, and we know he didn't claim to be St. Francis. The poem is called The Walk of Life, and it is often remembered as the Bill Buckner poem, after a baseball player who, at the end of a distinguished career, lets a ball go through his legs in a critical moment of the 1986 World Series. Jack urges us to look at our own imperfections, and to understand love's power to console us when those imperfections have been laid bare. Shh, one lover says to another in the middle of the night. It's all right. Sleep will come when you're not looking. Morning will come, and breakfast, and things that should be easy will be easy once more. It's the walk of life. You've walked it before, and you will walk it again. Shh, now, beloved. Jack showed tremendous strength and grace in the final months of his life. His ability to discuss his impending death calmly and directly helped the rest of us prepare for it as well as best we could. While he was able, he continued to perform and record even after his health was deteriorating, and he began using oxygen to help him breathe. Jack once wrote that the pain he felt earlier in life was the pain of not doing poetry. And once he found his voice, that voice I heard that Sunday afternoon at Club Passim, he kept writing and performing as long as he could. Jack has said about his poems that they often end up in a place he hadn't imagined when he started them. And I think that describes his life as well. Jack was deeply moved and surprised by the outpouring of affection toward him in his final months, not only from those who knew him well, but by others who may have just briefly crossed his path. I think Jack's reaction was completely genuine, but I don't think any of the rest of us are surprised. Jack's close listening, kind words, and gentle spirit made an impact wherever he went. In the front of one of Jack's books is this quote from Leonard Cohen's song, Anthem. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Jack didn't try to hide the cracks or make perfect offerings. He helped us find our way, and he spoke to us in a voice we'll never forget. Thank you.
John, that was lovely. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. It's interesting how no matter how hard we try to find all the people that might want to share something in these events and within the book and what have you, Jack's reach was huge. He reached far more people than we could possibly try to go out and collect. And so I'm really glad you found us and were able to share that with us. It really, really means a lot to me, and I'm sure to everyone else here as well. That was very kind of you to share that with us. Thank you again, John. I know that a gentleman here named Jerry Brown, Derek, Dobby Brown, something like that. He wants to say something. Derek, do you have a few words for us, Mr. Brown, Mr. Derek Brown, Mr. Right Bloody?
No, man, I'm good.
Oh, cool. Sweet.
No, I'm joking.
That's it, everyone.
It's just, I was like, no, I can't think of anything. Tonight was very moving. I was so grateful for everyone for sharing Jack's work. It's so accessible, and he moved you very quickly, and it was a miracle that these poems were found, and Carol was down to share them with the world. It's a strange thing, I think, to be a poet and to be alone so much when you're writing things down, and you kind of get really hungry to connect with others. And, you know, when all of us pass, maybe this is what you get. People sharing and laughing and crying and remembering you a bit, and remembering the little mark you made the night they saw you, or the chapbook they read of yours. And no matter how big or small, it's a beautiful thing. So thanks for showing up here tonight.
Thank you, Derek. And thank you again. Thank you for putting this book out. It really.
Thank you, Jessica, for being the badass too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna gather this shit. I'm gonna edit this shit, and I'm gonna get it to Mongo. Mongo's gonna beat the hell out of it, and we're gonna get this right. And a woman named Nona and Luna, who made the cover, and it just turned out so great. I was really pumped to have Jessica, especially your hand in this, and you not giving up, and us working together to make it happen. Thank you so much.
I think that if we can all get just a few people each to pick up this book, to buy this book, call your bookstores, your local bookstores, get them to carry it, and then tell those bookstores that you will send people to them to buy the book. I think that that's one way we can, one, help local bookstores, and two, get this book out there. I think that this is one of those books that could be a real, not a surprise to us, but maybe a surprise hit to others. You know.
Hey, just a second, Mike. How many people have a copy of the book? If we could all hold it up at the same time, I think you should grab a screenshot of that. This could be a good way to advertise the reading tomorrow.
That's a great idea.
Can you, somebody, I don't know how to do that, but somebody does.
I was gonna say if Kathleen doesn't have a copy, we really messed up.
Maybe we have to take it off a speaker view to see all of us.
Yeah, just put it in gallery view. Yeah.
Who's doing the shot? Who's doing?
I'm gonna do a screenshot. So if everybody has their book, hold them up. I think it's just a few of us. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll have to change that. So
You should. You can Photoshop the book in. Everybody just hold their hands up.
Yeah. So I got a screenshot. I can send it to everyone.
Put a green book up.
I want to notify everyone here, and John, if you could, as a matter of fact, here I'm gonna put my email address in the chat at gmail.com. Those of you who do not have, it's very easy. It's mightymikemcgee@gmail.com. John, please send me an email so that I have your contact. I would love to connect with you and invite you to the next 2 shows that are coming up. They'll be West Coast time. They'll start at 7 p.m. on the West Coast. So no worries if you can't make it. No worries to anyone who can't make it to any of the other West Coast shows. But I know Jody Knowles will be reading tomorrow, which I'm excited for. And Jessica, myself, and Derek will all be there. The link to tomorrow's event should work in the Zoom.
Oh, can I say something about that real quick, Mike?
Yeah.
I'm going to delete working with this ribbon company, and then Mike, if you'll send out just a regular Zoom link to keep it easy, we're just gonna make it free. We're gonna try and make it $2 so that people would show up. It felt like a show.
Sure.
and pay for shipping for if we shipped out a couple books. But it's just going to be free, and I'm going to change the links on our site, the Instagram, everything, tonight, tomorrow morning, so that it'll just come through you.
Taylor, yes. Now, we also need to do a book draw, right? So who here tonight bought a ticket? Okay, Matthew, Kathleen, you bought a ticket to your dad's book launch. Okay, that's fucked up.
Oh,
but what would be
$2?
I know, but what would be even more messed up is if you don't win one of his books, right? So
I found my book.
oh, good. Okay. So those of you who bought a ticket, you are entered into a book lottery. Are we still doing that, Derek? Or that's what was
yes,
posted.
we're going to give away 5 to 10 books out of all.
So, are we gonna do that privately and then notify them?
Yeah, afterwards we're going to just put all the emails into a hat and then draw that many and then ship them out.
Okay, perfect. Can I, if anyone has to go ahead and go. I have one last thing that I'd like to share with everyone if you want to hear it. Those of you who decide to stay in the next minute or so, but for the rest of you who have to go, good night. I love you all. Thank you for being here. And some of you I'll see tomorrow night. And the rest of you I will see another time. My name is Mike. It's been a real pleasure to host this event tonight, and I'm really looking forward to the next 2 events over the rest of the week. You've all been one of my favorite audiences ever on Zoom, for sure, without a doubt. Thanks again to everybody who shared something. Thanks to everybody who just listened. You know, it was really, really, really lovely evening. The thing that I was going to share, and again, I will not be offended if you all leave, but just this is what I read at Jack's memorial in Washington. I think may have been in or near Marysville. But this is what I read, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I may still have it, but I think I wrote it on a paper plate because it's all I had. So this is what I said. I knew Jim really well. I taught him lots what he knowed about grammar of. We met outside of the Seattle Poetry Slam in 2003 or 4. His first words to me were, "McGee, huh? Sounds Hawaiian." I'm Hawaiian, little island just west of Boston. The one time I beat him in a slam, he congratulated my victory with a phrase that rhymed with, "Whoa, chuck a shelf." I'll tell you, my good friend Joe McFeely was a hell of a poet, a man of his word, and that word was all nude burlesque. We became fast friends. He was always there for a fee. One of my fondest memories of Jake was just after we performed at Carol's school, and he offered to buy me lunch at Sherry's Diner. Now, some of the finest spoken word I ever saw was watching him haggle with the manager in an attempt to convince him that I, too, was a senior citizen. After lunch, we sat in his car, and he told me stories of his youth. Then he put on one of his favorite CDs and proceeded to lip-sync Baby Got Back word for word. He was okay for an old guy, nearly average. I miss you, Jerry. Send postcards. That's that. Figured I'd leave it on a light note, as I think Jack would appreciate that too. I love you all. I know Taylor wanted to chat. Jessica and Derek, I would like to chat with you as well. So once everyone else leaves. Oh, Taylor left. Okay. I'll call him. You guys can unmute yourselves. If you guys want to talk for a second, by all means, please. But I definitely want to have a little meeting with Derek and Jessica.
I just want to say before we go that thank you, Mike, for putting this on. This was an amazing hosting experience, and you did such a great job, especially I'm sure you were stressed out to the max because of the technical problems, but you did a wonderful job, and it was a really wonderful evening.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You know, I've hosted a Zoom event at least twice a week since COVID started. So I've had a lot of practice. And actually, it's funny too, because since the last indie feed, since the last time I was on indie feed, I have shifted from touring poetry, being a touring poet, to being a San Jose, Silicon Valley, South Bay Area host, MC, show producer. Like I just don't tour anymore. It's just not. It's not. It will be. I will go out again. I do go up and down the West Coast, and I do go to Europe, but I don't really venture east too much, other than to hop over the rest of the U.S. to get to Germany and Northern Europe. So, but yeah, I think once this is all said and done, I'm going to hit the road again. I got people who are trying to get me to come out to New Zealand and various other places. So yeah, definitely. I haven't been to Montreal since 2005. It's been a long time. Yeah, I'm due. Yep. I am due.
My honeymoon there. It's been 2003, so it's been a while. Great city.
Yeah, it really is a great city. It really is. Yeah. Edmund, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you find out about this event?
Tony Brown posted it on his Facebook wall. I used to be part of Port Veritas up in Portland, Maine.
Oh yeah.
And read over there.
Who was I was just talking to somebody about Port Veritas. Oh, from one of my open mics that I do on Zoom.
Oysters in Portland, Maine at Eventide, a little restaurant called Eventide.
Oh yeah, I know Eventide. I never actually went there. I always went to the cheaper places. So it's kind of funny when you visit places and you have money. You're like, oh, I'll try these expensive places, and I have no idea how they all survive.
Yeah,
because I'm sure.
I'm like, I'll never be again. Give me the nicest oyster.
Yeah, give that $4 sign, 4th Street, pay $300 for 2 people to eat dinner. It's just like I can't. Yeah, but I've heard of that. I didn't get to meet Jack McCarthy in person. I got to know Rick and Tony and Matt Richards, a bunch of other people through the poetry scene, but his Drunks and Other Poems Recovery is one of the most outstanding books I've read. I mean, it's just, and it's actually, I think, the perfect example of a book that you don't need to keep. I have it on Kindle still, but the copy I have is with someone who is in recovery, which is where it belongs.
One of my favorite stories about that book is that initially, and I know Derek should be able to confirm this because he did it. The book was originally going to be anonymous until Jack passed away, and then after it was going to go back into print with his name on it once he had passed away. But it went to print the day he died, if I'm not mistaken. Is that true, Derek?
I'm not sure if it was the day he died, but
soon after, I think.
Very, very close.
We didn't do 2 versions because he says he let us know things were getting bad.
Yeah.
John X, right? Where they're gonna put it as?
That's right.
Oh yeah, John X. That's right. Yeah, because Xavier is his middle name. He was born John Xavier McCarthy.
I think we made that cover with the X on it. And for the catalogs that went out to all the book buyers and Amazon and all that. So that's what it was in the world for a while. And then it'll work to try and switch it for the release of it.
It's probably the only book Right Bloody has ever produced that would never be autographed by the author. Yeah.
Wow.
It's not tour friendly.
Yeah.
Taylor Molly has a rule where people aren't allowed to look him in the eye at shows or get close to him, so he doesn't sign his books either.
That's true. That's very true. That's so true. And he kept trying to get everybody to call him Tamo, and I was like, dude, come on. It's like, what are you? Tamo. T-Mal. So I actually need to call Taylor very, very soon. So I'm going to ask everyone, if you guys don't mind, we're going to shut down this meeting so I can chat with Derek and Jessica. But it's really, thank you, Matthew. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mike. Lovely to see you.
So good to see you
all. That was amazing.
Thank you all.
Thanks, folks.
Good night, you guys.
Good night.
May the rest of the Zooms be with you.
Indeed, you too. I don't know if Catherine is still listening or on, but I don't think it necessarily matters.
Let me see if I can kick her.
I can. I always worry though that if I remove someone, it might they won't be able to rejoin this meeting, but I'm assuming they will be able to rejoin future meetings if they need to. Let's hope. Right? Catherine Blake, banned forever. Hey, Hey, that would suck for them.
What's that? She's not in the meeting.
So I started recording because it hadn't even occurred to me to do so, because I forgot that I was host. So I didn't start recording until Taylor was reading. So I'm still recording now.